Hello, I'm Angela from 𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗟𝗏crystals.com and I make healing crystal jewellery. Today I'm going to be covering crystals that can't be cleansed in water. If that's the type of video you do like to see, or you like to learn all about crystal properties, receive crystal healings and get crystal readings, please do consider subscribing and liking below. And if you want to see my crystal jewellery, please do pop over to 𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗟𝗏crystals.com and have a browse. Okay, so crystals that can't be cleansed in water. And the first big group of these crystals are soft crystals. You have the Mohs hardness scale, which starts at 1, which is soft, and goes up to 10, which is hard. And basically anything under 5 is really soft and could be damaged in water. The first in this group is selenite, and that is super soft. It's only a 2 on the Mohs hardness scale, and this can crack and even dissolve in water. If you've got a desert rose, which is very similar type of substance, that can also actually dissolve, and you get the beautiful patterns on the outside of the desert rose, and that will disappear if you leave it in water for too long. With all of these, you'll probably get away with quickly popping it into water, but because they tend to absorb water, I wouldn't risk it. The second one is Celestite. I'm going to mention Angelite as well. I haven't got an example of Angelite here today, but they're both on the hardness scale of 3.5, so they're pretty soft. Celestite, all these pale bits are super soft bits, and what tends to happen is that these bits can dissolve or absorb water, and then it will flake apart and fall apart on you. I have had that happen, so it has been tried and tested. So these bottom bits do tend to flake apart, and then you get less and less of your crystal left. Angelite is very similar hardness, and it tends to more become dull and matte in water, so it sort of loses its prettiness, Angelite. So we also have fluorite, and polished fluorite is beautiful. That shine with these beautiful striations of colour. And what tends to happen with fluorite, whilst it's 4 on the Mohs hardness scale, so it is slightly harder than the others, it's actually very slightly soluble. And so what will happen, this lovely polished surface will start to go matte, and it will basically ruin and start to pit that surface. I mean, it is very soft. You can just see the edges here. It started to chip, and that tends to be what happens with fluorite. It's not the most durable of stones. So you'll start to find little bits of it will chip. But if it's in water, then the surface will start to very slightly dissolve, and you'll get pitting, and it'll go rough and won't be very nice. And the last one I'm going to show in this, there are more than this, but these are the ones I'm going through, is Lipidlite. And these tend to have flakes of mica going through them. And the mica tends to form sheets, and when it's in water, I mean, this is a soft stone anyway, so it's only 3 on the hardness scale, but it's the mica that tends to destroy it the quickest. You can see I picked this one because you can actually see the mica sheets in this, and this I actually exposed to water by mistake. It was in a puddle that I didn't notice for a while, and you can actually see it starts to flake. It's sort of been permanently damaged, and you can see this was beautiful polished surface, and it's whilst it does reflect the light, it's just not as pretty as it was. Yeah, the flakes will tend to, the mica will tend to flake apart, and it will ruin your Lipidlite. Usually you do have to expose it for water for a little while, but I mean, don't risk it. If you've got a beautiful crystal, why risk it? There's also minerals that are porous and that can absorb water, and this can damage the crystal. So this is the second group of crystals that aren't to be going to water. And the first, these beautiful, you can see all the different colours, Ethiopian opals. And these are terribly porous. And what will happen is they'll absorb water, they'll lose their shine, the colour will go, and if they dry out too quickly, the stone will crack. These aren't the most durable of stones anyway. I've had quite a few opals crack on me over the years. And water and exposure to water, or even damp atmospheres, they can really damage. And because they just absorb the water, they're so porous, you really need to keep them in sealed bags until you use them, and try not to expose them to water. And the other one is turquoise, and this will actually fade and can even crack in water. You can see the back where it's not polished, it's very matte, and this, when it's not polished, can be very porous. Polishing does make things more durable, so a polished opal will last a lot better than something that's not, and the same with turquoise. And they quite often stabilize these by certain processes, which helps to increase their durability as well. So they do have ways of making them more durable, but as I say, why risk it? Now, the third type of mineral are crystals that contain iron, and iron can oxidize, and when it oxidizes it goes to a red, and that can mean the crystal can actually change color or even rust in water. And something like hematite, I have had these actually rust when they've got exposed to water. I've done every mistake in the book when we come to these things. Yeah, the hematite, it actually goes like brown rust. It's really not pleasant at all. But it contains iron oxide, and if I put that into water polished, it may be all right, but if it's got any little scratch or crack, that will expose and that will rust and turn into brown flaky rust on the surface, which nobody wants. And also something like Tangerine Quartz, and this is more of a hematite quartz, but I'm just showing this as an example because this is actually one of these stones I can't wash in water because it falls apart because the base is so soft. But if it's exposed to water, Tangerine Quartz, then it can, as it contains iron oxide, the colour will actually fade in water, so it will get less colour if you put your Tangerine Quartz into water. The other set of minerals which can't go into water, and it's for a completely different reason, is they are poisonous and they leach toxins into the water or can even create toxic gases in contact with water. Now, I haven't got anything that toxic that with me today that's going to create toxic gases, but something like malachite can be a bit toxic. I mean, it contains copper, and to be perfectly honest, it's not the most toxic of minerals, because copper's, I mean, we get copper coins and copper jewellery, so it's not terribly poisonous, but you can't ingest it. Anything, if you ingest anything with copper, it can be very poisonous. So if you put this into water and it leaches copper, basically you've made that water toxic. And then if you pour that down the sink, you're basically pouring toxic water into the sink. Now, most of the time that will dilute out, but again, why risk it? Don't put it into water. If things are polished, you're usually fine, and it should be okay. But I mean, this is actually raw at the bottom, so you could this would definitely leach copper into the water and make it toxic. And lastly is pyrite. And pyrite can actually produce sulfuric acid in water. And it can also contain heavy metals. So, I mean, as with all minerals, you get different compositions, different inclusions. But pyrite is known that it can include heavy metals. And all of these can leach into the water and make it poisonous. So basically, you'll be left with poisonous water that is not great to dispose of. So you need to avoid these actually hitting the water. So how do you cleanse crystals that can't be in water, I hear you all ask? So there are several ways. There is sound. So something like this Tibetan bowl, the sound of this will actually create a very high vibration, and you can use that to clear your crystals. You can actually use other crystals such as selenite. Selenite is so cleansing. You can place your other crystals on it. So if you can buy selenite, which is like flat like this one, then you can just place these on it overnight and it will cleanse any crystals that are around it. So you can just sort of make like a little cleansing station and surround your crystals next to your selenite and leave that overnight. You can also use smoke, so saging, burning incense. These all higher the vibration and will cleanse their energy. Also, you can use full moon moonlight. So if you put them on a windowsill overnight when it's the full moon, these cleanse and recharge. Loads of people, it's their favourite way of charging and cleansing their crystals, putting them in full moon moonlight. But obviously that's not always available, so you need to have other ways of cleansing your crystals. If you need to cleanse them, if you've had a particularly negative experience, sometimes crystals can absorb this energy. You can also cleanse with intention. So you could just pick up your crystal, hold it in your hands and just intend it to be cleansed. Imagine a white light cleansing the crystals. So it's like a visualization. So that's another way of cleansing your crystals. And the other way is you can use salt. Now, salt does damage certain things. So what I would do is personally get like a bowl of salt, and then you can place them on like a little bit of greaseproof paper or foil, and then have the salt underneath it. So it creates like a cleansing pad, very similar to this. So it's not actually touching the salt. My favourite way personally is with smoke or with sound. I found those are very, very quick. I also use Reiki. I use Reiki on all my jewellery, all my crystals. So anything that I'm selling on my site, I've actually cleansed with Reiki symbols. So it's the quickest, it's most powerful, but obviously not everybody can do that. But everybody can do intention, and you can also buy incense, which is pretty cheap. Sage. All of these things will really help to keep your crystals cleansed. So, if you did enjoy that, please do click the like and subscribe. I hope you found that informative. And if you did find it informative, as I always say, do try to subscribe and support the channel. And if you do want to see any of my jewellery, please do pop over to 𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗏crystals.com. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.